Hello and welcome to another real-time storytelling with the Cave of Chronicles. These used to be twice a week, they've now just dropped down to once a week, and this is the first really with the new format, having been away. Hey Tootie! The format of the actual stream isn't going to change, it's more the long term. Hey Legion! Oh, excuse me. Itchy nose. As usual, to cover the early bits and pieces, the first 10 minutes are largely working out what the story is going to be and what craziness chat can come up with. Now, considering they've had a couple of weeks now without one of these, I'm scared. Yes, Tootie, I'm looking at you. But aside from that, the bulk of the first 10 minutes will disappear as soon as YouTube lets me, and it will cut down just to the story itself. And then that will probably happen between 8 and 10 tomorrow morning. Moving on from there, then it'll all get tidied up and shunt out. If you get there before that point, then if you skip in by 12 minutes, that should take you to about the start of the story. What else is going on? We've just gone to the slightly longer once a week format for a while to see how that works. If it works well, we will stick with it. The first two are out. The first one was The Lurking Fear, which was a couple of weeks ago. It's not had many views, but go look at it. It's great. And then yesterday we had The Fire of Asher... Brain's gone. Ashurbanipal, that's the one, by Robert E. Chambers. Even certain I've got the right author now. But either way, he's the guy who wrote Conan and did a lot of work, well, not a lot of work with, but a lot of correspondence with Lovecraft, and there are direct links and it does tie into the mythos. So that went live yesterday and it's actually doing quite nicely. And as anyone who's been here before may notice some new things, because we finally managed to hit 3,000 hours. So we now have YouTube memberships, as well as all of the nice little bits like super chats, super thanks, and whatever else YouTube have thrown in there. So feel free to take part and use any of those as you see fit. Oh, and of course the usuals. Like, subscribe, click the bell, then all to know when we've got new episodes coming out, and share amongst friends. Also, put any ideas you've got for future episodes or things you'd like to see down below in the comments. That's now all said. What have you got for me, guys? A construction worker named Harry the Hammer, who likes to hammer nails but has a fear of heavy objects like hammers and loud noises startle him. He's also a giant mouse in human costume. Thanks Tootie, I will try and get some of that in there. I've got some ideas starting to form. Anything else? Legion, you got anything for me? You're the only people in chat at the moment, so there's no point asking anyone else. Oh. And he likes to eat cheese while watching YouTube videos. Eating YouTube videos, that'd be an interesting one. He is married to a pug named Sally, and she is a bank robber by night and a baker by day. Words fail me. This is currently only water. Next time I might replace it with vodka. And trust me, if I chugged vodka like that, we wouldn't be getting to the end of the stream. Not anymore, anyway. So right, we've got some stuff. I've got some ideas germinating in my head. Stranded on an island. You're trying to make this impossible for me, aren't you? Okay. I've got something. Hello, whoever just joined. Please say something sensible. The island is haunted or has a monster on it. Well, at least that last bit is. Everybody's afraid of island monsters. Maybe I'll call the island monster Tootie. Three minutes. Maybe Nutkins is an island monster. If anyone wants to know who Nutkins is, then you kind of need to have a look at the long history of all of these live parts. Nutkins is a squirrel knight who rides a pug and wields a chainsaw. Some of the time. He's a were-squirrel at other points. He's Tutti Frutti's special invisible friend. Legion's special invisible friend is a giant fairy cake. Oh, less than a minute. Fruity, did you just propose to Legion? If Nutkins is married to a fairy cake, that's a bit like you marrying Legion. And then I get silence. I think I broke them. And it's time. The party was dull. Harry was not impressed. It'd been a hard day at work on the construction site, but putting through large nails and bolts through heavy RSJ beams on a construction site was loud. It hurt his ears. He was starting to get older, and the fear of someone on a higher beam dropping a hammer on his head got more and more real. And each time he heard the clang of a hammer smacking into a bolt up above him, it made him jump. But he wasn't at work now. He was at a party. He was at a party with his wife, which was unusual. She wasn't usually about at night. He wasn't quite sure why. I mean, she worked hard in the bakery in the day, but nighttime, who knows? They weren't alone, but they didn't know many people at the party. They knew the host, Gloria. She was strange, but she'd come in, put a special order at Sally's bakery, and now was coming around with large quantities of fairy cakes for everybody. So, with little thought, Harry grabbed a fairy cake, grabbed another drink, and drank. Everyone was starting to pick up the cakes, and they were all waiting, it appeared, for Gloria to say something. She smiled, looked at them all, taking her own fairy cake. Let the real party begin. And then, in one, she ate the entire cake. Replicating her, the rest of the room did the same, followed by swigging down with the drink. Thinking it a bit odd, as it cleared his throat, Harry wondered quite what was going on. And then the world started to spin, swirl, and everything went black. Harry slowly came round. His head was splitting. It ached like nothing. He put his hand up to his head and something felt wrong. His hair didn't feel right. He started to pat his face. It was shaped differently. He had ears that were perky and a snout, but he still had hands. He opened his eyes and the sunlight beat down on his head as he looked up, seeing open sky and a bright sun. His hands were more like paws and claws. Looking around, he was startled when he saw something in the same clothing that Sally had been wearing. But it looked more like a dog, a pug. Shook his head, looking round, looking at the entire rest of where they were. He could see sea in the distance, sand, and the trees seemed to be pine trees. He nudged Sally, who, snorting, came round and looked. He was startled when she saw him and jumped back. He was, "No, Sally, it's me, it's Harry. There was something in those cakes." She shook her head. No, I made them. They won. I think Gloria doctored them. She started to look at herself. Duh, she screamed when she saw her hands and her legs and her shape. What am I? So, you're a dog. Her eyes went wide. A pug, to be more accurate. She put her hands up. But it's still a cute pug. You're sweet. It looks nice. She looked around uncertainly. We need to find out where we are. We need to look round. Maybe there are others here. We need to find food. They went and walked carefully, trying to stay under cover, wanting to keep out of the hot, beating sun. It occurred to Harry. They had no water. They had no food. How could they survive? Moving down towards the shore, they saw the remains of a boat. It seemed ancient. It seemed like an old galleon, or in shape, but the remains looked far, far more recent. Going down, they dug through and found a tablet, a computer tablet in there, which confused them, seeming to show like it had some kind of signal. But when they tried to access it, the only thing on it was YouTube. Looking around, there seemed to be some water, but for food there were only boxes and boxes of cheese. Eyes wide. Harry, cheese and YouTube. Sounds like a good Saturday night to me. Sally smacked him. They sat down, taking cover within the wreck. It provided some kind of shelter. Looking up, time went by, and gradually the sun started to sink. The couple didn't talk much, trying to come to terms with what was happening where they were. They put across ideas. Maybe it was a dream, but it felt too real. They could feel the sand under feet. They could feel the scratchiness of their fur. Their senses were alive in ways that they shouldn't be able to imagine if they were humans. Then, as the sun came down, the roars started. Suddenly, Harry was terrified. There was something on the island with them. They didn't know what, but it scared him. Sally was a bit more hardened. She was a bit more prosaic. So, don't worry, we've got this. But I can handle it. But you're just a baker. She smiled. I also bake. Not sure quite what she meant, besides making bad movie references. They headed out, moving up onto the island. The ship was too obvious a point. They had some water, they had some cheese, and they had YouTube on the tablet. There were various noises coming from round the island. There were a roaring or two. But then, aside from that, there were moans and wails, as though it was haunted as well as a monster. Moving, they crept, being very quiet. Sally, making sure that Harry knew to keep his voice down. They stepped, going carefully through. There was a boom overhead that startled Harry, made him jump and squeal a little. Sally just looked at him. Lightning had streaked across the sky, and as it had, they could see various figures, lit up, translucent figures, wandering through the dark. But unlike them, some were only looking like strange animal figures. Others were human, and some of them were humans that they recognised. People from the area that had disappeared. They kept walking, carefully, quietly. A roar came out, off to the left. They turned right. Sally looked and found a heavy stick. Harry looked at her. "What? Where did you?" "I may have a side job at night. Don't worry, dear. I've got this." His eyes went wide. Then there was another chittering roar from a different direction. They looked at each other confused. Now they were dangerous. They looked. The ghosts were ethereal and heading towards them. They were trapped. They started to run. Pushing their feet, stumbling, still having no idea how they could get off this island, how they could be safe. Trees brushed at them. Suddenly the wind was coming up. Rain started coming down with heavy lightning bolts of a tropical storm buffeting the island. The ghosts didn't notice. As they moved towards the centre of the island, they saw a huge clearing, and standing in the middle of it, stood roaring, was a monster. It had the body of a man, but bloated, rotting, full of pus, with maggots coming out of its head. And its head wasn't human. It was in a way like them, but while being almost a zombie, it was part shark. It looked at them, its teeth grinning with cracked and broken parts of a distorted mouth. The teeth, the multiple rows of the shark, all in place as the lightning flashed across and sparked, showing each one brightly in the light. The two screamed. There was still the chittering off to one side and the ghosts, but the shark thing was heading towards them, and they turned and they ran. They could hear the thudding, booming as it pushed through, the trees splintering as it went past, roaring. It came up. They ducked behind a tree. There were some rocks moving. They dodged and dived between the rocks as the shark thing came across and smacked against them. Looking up, they see, suddenly hearing a scream. Looking over, they see, amongst the various stones, with the shark moving round the outside, there was a large central pillar, and chained to that was an elderly lady that they instantly recognised. It was their next door neighbour, Mrs. Jenkins. They'd tried to contact her several times recently, but she'd been missing for days, and now they knew why. What they had to wonder was what this had to do with Gloria, and what this had to do with the party. The large creature shambled round, and they moved back into the crack. It had stopped paying attention to them, and it now focused on the lady chained to the central pillar. Smiling, it put its hands out and just ripped, pulling her away from the pillar. Her arms, though, remained, and there was a squelching sound as it separated. And then, with a terrifying, dull crunching, it put its head down, and its giant teeth proceeded to consume her. Harry and Sally were both stood transfixed in utter terror, shaken to their core as this creature from the abyss proceeded to eat their neighbour. Suddenly, as it looked up and roared, the sound shook them out of their stupor, and they turned and ran for their lives, hoping, above all hope, that the creature was now sated. Sadly for them, that hope was not to be, and it wasn't long before they heard the crashing and thudding of the creature chasing behind them. They didn't know what to do. They had, on each side now they had ghosts. Suddenly hearing the roaring, using that, they were moving in, and there was the chittering in the distance ahead, but it was the only way to go. Running, they got caught, tearing their clothing, tearing their fur, being ripped on the trees. And getting there, they saw a giant squirrel. Well, squirrel-like creatures with hands. Harry ran up, turned round, and looked. The monster was coming. Sally looked at him. "Keep going, Harry, keep going." Harry struggled to his feet and continued, trying to pull right. The two monsters crashed together. The fight was of epic proportions. Squirrel versus shark is not a combat you think would normally go multiple ways. But the large squirrel thing, its teeth strong to bite through nuts, its hands clawed, was easily a match for the shark as they tore parts of each other. Fighting like a battle of titans, Harry and Sally backed away, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to escape. The two creatures were fighting. They could see in the distance, so turned and ran. As they ran, they saw the ghosts coming closer. "Get her, get Gloria, it's her, she took our money, it's only for the money." Sally screamed, "Why? Why, what? How? What did they do? What money?" But the ghosts just kept their constant chant. The sound of the fight seemed to be dying down in the distance. And thinking, they headed back towards the centre, maybe where Mrs. Jenkins had been chained was the place to go. Maybe that could get them home. As they got there, they looked. The battle seemed to have stopped. No one knew quite what had happened. As they almost made it, they turned and looked, and they saw the shark was coming again. There was thudding and breaking, and Harry looked. The monster terrified him, but it was his Sally. He turned over, taking the stick Sally, find your way home. Get Gloria. In the centre where the stone was, just behind it, a swirling portal had opened. Harry turned and charged at the shark-like monster. Sally screamed as he swung the stick, but the shark's hand burst it, shattering into stones, its hands going round and grabbing, sticking claws deeply in and tearing at Harry, who screamed in pain. Sally couldn't look, and the last thing Harry saw before the monster bit his head off was Sally disappearing through the portal. How was that? I think I got most, if not all of it. Besides mentioning the SS Puddle Duck. It took some doing, but I think I managed it and actually kept it fairly cohesive. That was a challenge. Next week, give me less of one. And you got fairy cakes and you got nutkins. So I hope everybody enjoyed it and the bit of fun that it is. There will be another one next Sunday. So please come and watch that. And remember, like, subscribe, hit the bell, join. Please do join YouTube. There's also a Patreon if you prefer that, which can get you onto the Discord server. And watch the weekly episodes. As I said yesterday, was the Fire of Ashurbanipal. So, any thoughts, any ideas for next time? Because if you can give me a bit of Cave of Nutkins. Well, yes, that is our first. I don't think YouTube automatically showed it. I should dress as Nutkins. That's my first super chat, so thank you very, very much, Cynthia. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Maybe when I hit 1,000 subs, maybe, because I've got to see if I can find a costume, when I hit 1,000 subs and 4,000 viewing hours and gain full monetization, Legion, I may do a stream dressed as Nutkins for you. And I intend to do something for it, so remind me it closer to that point. My wife just said she will remind me, and I'll be eating fairy cakes as well. Anyway, that all said, farewell for now, and see you soon.